Hello and welcome to the patron saints of pop culture. I'm Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today we're going to talk about Netflix's Maniac.
So we invite you to come and join our conversation on this. It has been a while since it was released. I think it was back in October.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So, obviously spoiler alert, but, if you haven't watched it yet, then when are you going to get around to it?
Yeah, just hop on Netflix and watch it real quick. I do have to say, both of us are still getting over our colds, so we apologize for the sniffles and sounding a little weird.
So, yeah, sorry about that. Yep. So, in true Netflix fashion, it does give nods to a few of their other series, which is great. Ozark gets a shout out because one of the actresses from Ozark is in the show, so it's great. With that, let's move on to our summaries and reviews.
Yes.
All right. I was finding it a little hard to summarize the limited series. But best I think I'm going to do is people got problems and they want to solve them with medication, but it doesn't work that way. And there's my summary.
All right. I'm going to give the listeners a little bit more substance to my summary. So, Annie and Owen are strangers who decide to partake in a clinical trial of a new drug. It's a very intensive study, and they actually have to live there, which is a little strange. But in the end, they become close friends.
They find friendship.
They find friendship and joy, possibly.
I'm really glad that it was not a love story. It was more.
No,
it was just friendship.
Like a friendship, yeah.
Yeah.
Even though he kind of, at first he thought it was going to be a love story, but it wasn't. But anyway,
yeah.
The fantasies that we make up in our mind, right?
Yeah. No, we'll talk about that here in a little bit.
Yeah. Sorry, my transition for you was a little too soon. I'll save it for later.
Yeah. I really liked it. I think that it's really on par with a lot of the other things that we've been watching recently. It's I think some of the very same threads, which I'm going to pick up on here, like from The Haunting of Hill House and Magicians Season 3. Let's see. I think those are the only two things that we had talked about besides the OA.
Yeah, we haven't talked a lot about other things, but don't worry. I mean, we have a lot of stuff coming down in the woodworks. So they're on their way. After
our next OA episode, we are going to be talking about The Good Place, because I'm pretty sure that was the season finale. So, we'll be talking about The Good Place, and I think it'll stay in one episode. We'll see. It may split into two parts, but we'll see. But I think some of the same themes that we see being pulled through a lot of the same, not even the same genre, like some of the same television that's coming out at the same time. It's like I say, it's the culture of our era.
Well, the themes are on everybody's minds.
Exactly.
So it's easy to relate to.
Which is what I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. But it's very much geared to millennials who are, soon to be turning 40. A lot of us are, starting families, and kind of adults and are kind of a little disillusioned with adulthood. And I think this played a big role in Maniac, but that's kind of why I liked it.
Yes, you tend to talk about that a lot, I've realized. But I mean...
Well, I told you it's the same themes that we've been talking about.
Yep. My review, I also did like it, but I liked it for other reasons. I liked it because it was goofy, it was funny, it was kind of scary at some points, and a little terrifying. And I really fell in love with Annie and Owen at the end. And I really appreciated them as people at the end, which doesn't happen a lot in television now. I mean, I felt like I really appreciated the struggles that they both went through. Really. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I liked the way that the writers and the producers and directors put this together, because there was really funny parts and there was really weird parts, and like, I don't know, it was just great. It's like all a bunch of these genres put into one great thing, and I liked it a lot.
And it, Sally Field looked like she was having a lot of fun. So.
Yes. Yep.
And I don't know if they made Jonah Hill just make him look just awful at the beginning, but it was kind of one of those things that you were like, I think he looked better when he was like overweight.
Well, when you're overweight for so long, sometimes, I mean, your skin is overstretched because of that, because of, all, I mean,
yeah,
you
but
and
I
I
think
both
that
know
they were,
we lost a lot of weight too, so.
Yeah. And I think that they made him look a little bit more sickly at the beginning.
Oh, they definitely did, because,
yeah.
I mean, they both had to be, or show that they were sick in order to be part of this clinical trial anyway.
Yeah, and definitely in some of the fantasy shots that he did look a lot better. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, the magic of Hollywood.
Magic of Hollywood. Make us look sick and make us look
sexy.
And that's pretty much what we're going to talk about, is fantasy versus reality.
Sick versus sexy?
Well, and that's the magic of Hollywood. And and here's the thing: is that a lot of people were picking up on this theme primarily because of references to Don Quixote. Don Quixote is by Michael Cervantes, which it was what is considered to be the very first modern novel, which it's set out, even though it's a huge book, it's set out in the same kind of template of storytelling that our modern novels take nowadays. And I think that very quickly you catch on to those themes that that the show pulls from it, that it does kind of take a modern, very loose adaptation of Miguel de Cervantes' work. Sorry, I've got a cold brain right now, which is...
No, that's okay.
Well,
and it also helps the fact that they keep bringing up the book over and over again throughout the entire series.
Well, and I think that's why, is they pulled a lot from it, is they pulled a lot of this kind of fantasy versus reality kind of idea out from there. And the book does take that question and ask, is it better to let somebody live in that fantasy, or to bring them back out into reality, even if they are a fool in reality? And I think this takes it a step further in saying that I think life is best lived in between. But let's get there. First, let's focus on Owen. Owen, kind of at the very beginning, Owen is lost in his fantasies, which I think a lot of people are misdiagnosing him as schizophrenic. I know that he said that he was schizophrenic, but he said it was a different moniker for it, because there's different forms of schizophrenia. There is different, because not all of them are seeing visual hallucinations.
Well, no, most of them are audio
hallucinations. Yeah, his was full blown kind of visual hallucinations
of this other brother.
Yeah, of this other brother. And his own self-aggrandizement, which, we've talked about before, and I've even written about.
Yeah, but he's meant for grander things. He thinks that he's supposed to be a hero. Yep. Yeah,
so one of the things that I want to talk about really is, how does a person get lost in these fantasies? How does one just kind of... Because as a person who was lost in fantasies like this, in self-aggrandizement... kind of thing, I have no idea how I got there. I'm just wondering if it's visible from somebody on the outside.
I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there when you entered it yourself, initially.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I can see why you would rather go into that mindset instead of facing reality, because it's easier. It's easier, as in it almost puts blinders on you.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's like easier. So I think that might be one of the reasons why people go into there, but I don't know why you went into your fantasies.
I'm not asking about me specifically.
Okay.
I'm asking about people.
In
Broad strokes.
broad strokes. I mean, I'm also speaking on, like, for me, if I were to go into like a fantasy world, I think I would probably do it because it would be easier and it would help alleviate some kind of other stresses.
Well, I think this is what so many people are afraid of with people in video games and stuff like that. They're afraid of people getting lost in those fantasy worlds. But I really feel that people who partake in those things, that they're not necessarily clinically have mental illness.
Well, no, I think it's all has to do with balance. You know what I mean?
Boundaries.
Yeah.
And healthy boundaries. And it doesn't mean that, if somebody plays video games a lot, every time that they're home, that, they've got bad boundaries. It just means they prefer using their time that way.
Yeah. Sure, it might not be the best way to spend your time sometimes, depending on the scenario, but they know that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is that, for instance, if, like when I was single, I would go home. I would play video games a lot because that's all I had, really. I'm not good at going out and making friends. I'm not good at doing very much else besides what I was doing, my job, and my video game time, which I felt was unwinding for me.
And what's kind of funny? The reason why I started playing video games is because I wanted to be included in people's conversations about video games. So you were using it as almost like I guess, not, would you say it was an escape? Not like a full escape, but just, just something that you weren't doing it for like the social aspect of it. You were doing it because it's something you could entertain yourself with without necessarily involving other people.
Yeah.
And then I was doing it in order to get myself involved into other people's lives.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of weird.
Well, and sometimes I felt like the video games were healthier than my goal to watch every episode of Star Trek, which I did succeed, by the way. But
that's not a bad goal.
It's not a bad goal, but it was very time consuming. This is why I'm asking these questions. I'm asking these questions to get an idea from somebody who I feel is more grounded than I had been traditionally. So this is, I'm asking broad strokes.
Yes, broad strokes.
What is the appeal then to get lost in a fantasy?
Well, the thing that gets me closest to being like involved in a fantasy like idea is surprise, surprise, I'm a big Harry Potter nerd.
Yeah.
I know, like, most people are like, well, yes, and I would kind of immerse myself into Harry Potter. Like, there was a really long time in my life where that I, like, breathed, eat, and slept Harry Potter, like, all the time. And yes, I knew I wasn't a witch, but I wanted to be in that reality so badly. Like, I'm like, why can't Hogwarts be a thing? Like, I'm still convinced that Hogwarts just lost my letter because the time they would have sent out the letter, they were still trying to recover.
You mean Overmorny?
What?
That's the American house, or the American...
Oh, that's true. That's true. Well, at this point in time, I did not know that existed.
Yeah.
So, but the point being is, that's probably as close as I can get to, like, maybe wanting to be in, like, a fantasy world, I guess, is immersing myself fully into the Harry Potter culture.
Well, I get that. And for me, I think a lot of it was that it gave me a chance to be something that I wasn't here in this reality. It gives me a chance to be bigger than myself. And so often, I think that's what the appeal for a lot of people who've become disillusioned with their reality. That it's easier to get lost in these other worlds. I'm not going to call them fantasies necessarily because honestly, I'm a big believer in in the theoretical science that there are so many universes out there, parallel universes out there, that everything that possibly can happen is happening right now at this very moment. In so many, infinite number of universes.
There's a book about that.
There is a book. There's a lot of books about that.
Yep.
Which is, my favorite, my favorite genre aside from time fiction is, time travel fiction, which is, the alternate universe ideas, alternate universes, which, by the way, my favorite one recently is by Blake Crouch. Sort of new book, came out in 2017. Fantastic book. Pick it up. It's called Black. I'll get back to that. Anyway. But I think the appeal for us as millennials is so much that idea of wanting to be other than ourselves and not seeing the true value in who we are.
I also could think too, just to kind of more broad stroke it too. I think part of it is that when we were younger, like we were like force fed, like, well, especially in America, like America is the greatest, like America is the land of opportunity, and we are like the mixing pot. Is that what is that the right term?
Melting pot.
Melting pot. We were the melting pot, and America is great, like all that jazz. And then as we grew older, we were like, wait a minute, America compared to other countries is not at all great. Like, what are you talking about? You're saying you're the greatest, but then we have so many problems that all these other countries have managed to fix and are perfectly fine. But I think that's part of it too, is as millennials, we were fed that fantasy, and then we grew up and we're like, what? Like, that's not at all what you told me.
Yeah, America's number one in most imprisoned people per capita.
Hooray.
Hooray. At least we're number one in something.
Yeah, I guess. If we're going to be number one in something, why not it be that, right?
Number one in military spending. Hooray.
Hooray. Anyway, but I think that's part of it too, which is why maybe this theme is brought up over and over again.
Well, exactly. Is that, sort of an escape. And this is, brings us to Annie, who I think is very steeped in her reality. She's so steeped in her reality that she's looking for an escape. That I think that whereas Owen is kind of the reverse end of the spectrum, where he's so steeped in his fantasy that he doesn't know what reality is, that she's so steeped in her reality that she's looking for an escape. She's looking for a fantasy or a way out of what she deals with on a day-to-day basis.
I would say she is more rooted in reality than Owen, but I don't think she's 100% there, because her not wanting to go visit her sister's grave is stopping her from acknowledging fully what it means for her sister to not be alive.
Well, yes. And I also believe that it's, for her, I think it's her trying to remain in that moment of the accident.
Yeah, and almost like she wants to stay in control.
Well, she wants to stay in control, as if by some weird happenstance she has a chance to fix it. Which that's not the way it works. Mm-mm. That's not the way that life works, and so many of us get stuck there. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself there, but would you say that she's kind of defined by her guilt from the accident and feeling that she's caused her sister's death?
Well, yeah, I think it's a lot of things. I mean, she feels partly responsible because them being distracted while driving. Also, too, there's a whole big old survivor's guilt aspect to it as well, too, which definitely comes into play. So I would say if she's not defined by it, it's definitely a big driving force.
All right. Now,
what do you think?
I do think that, in so many of these shows, like The Haunting of Hill House, like The Magicians, like Leftovers, like so many other shows, they revolve so much around guilt, around how we as human beings kind of deal with guilt and grieving and just letting go of the past and so many of these things that I think that yes, they're all that she is, because that's the modern trope, or the millennial trope. Is can we define things that way?
No, I just say modern.
Modern trope. Do you believe that fantasy can pull someone out of this funk, this kind of staying in that grief moment, their trauma?
I guess it could help for some people. For me, the only way that I can get over my grief is facing it, like head on, and just kind of getting it over with. I guess for some people it might be beneficial, but I always find it's more beneficial just to acknowledge it and deal with it.
Well, see, and that's the problem. I think that so many people people can't really deal with the abstracts of a traumatic moment in a way that makes sense to them. In a way like that for them, fantasy is a way of getting themselves out of the situation and being able to look back objectively upon the traumatic event and seeing where they may have gone wrong, what they can change about themselves, and how they can be better moving forward.
Can you give an example?
Well, for me, I had recently a pre-traumatic event revolving around social media. I had decided that I was just going to cut off social media. I was not going to do it as much as I had been in the past. You can read my blog about virtual identities and about how I was kind of fooling myself into being, other people, other ideas, other identities that I was trying on. And it wasn't until I actually listened to this book. I started listening to audiobooks at work. Listened to this book, which is called Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Tom Switterlich, which I absolutely adored. I think it was one of the best books that I've listened to in a long time. This guy who's kind of addicted to his internet just idea of himself.
Internet persona?
Yeah, his internet persona, but also that he was living in his trauma of losing his wife in a traumatic terrorist attack, which comes into play, which is sets the plot in motion. But I think so much of how that character deals with his life and with everything going on from there, I think just helped me to realize some of the things that I was doing and how to be better moving forward.
Okay.
So, I know I'm talking a lot here, but I want to talk a little bit about this idea and growing up as a millennial, not just as a millennial, but I want to also say it's for Gen X and Boomers and for Generation Z. But kind of growing up in this weird state of arrested development that we've got going on, especially in America, that is life competitive as they make it seem in the show here?
Like in real life?
Yeah.
I don't think. I do feel a little bit that people don't necessarily want to work for things.
Yes.
Is that kind of what you're trying to get at?
No. More that that they take almost everything as a personal attack because they're trying to get ahead. Like, I think, for instance, Dr. Mantle-Ray, James Mantle-Ray, not Greta, that for him, this whole concept, was his, and he didn't want anybody else to take credit for that, like Dr. Morimoto and Dr. Azumi. For him, it was very competitive, And I think this is true for every character. They had their own competitions with their family, with the outside world.
Yes.
And that their fantasies kind of were their way of helping them win their competitions in their own mind.
I was about to say, well, in their own, like in their head, yes, with the competitions.
So back to the question then, is life outside of the television show as competitive as it seems in the television show?
Well, in real life, people are born with advantages and disadvantages. That's just a fact of reality. You can disagree with me all you want, but the facts remain the same, that is true.
Yeah.
And socially, politically, economically, it's just a fact of life. So for some people, in order to get ahead and get what they want, it's going to come a little bit easier, and it still may be competitive, but the way they're competing is a little bit easier for them to do than, say, somebody who is working at a more of a disadvantage trying to get in that same spot. That person who's at a disadvantage is going to have to work harder and feel more of the competition than that person that's ahead. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna go into this is where I was going with this, and I'm going to say this really fast because I've kind of gone over my time here, but I really feel that our fantasies now, we have this fantasy of destiny, this destiny that we're supposed to have, that we're supposed to have our lives lived out this way. For more on that conversation, you can go back and listen to any of our episodes on the magicians, because I know that I talk about that a few times in those. And I think that's the ultimate fantasy for all of us, is this destiny that we're destined to be much bigger than we actually are. And that leads us to not appreciate what we actually are and who we actually are and what we actually can do. So anyway, sorry for going over time.
No, that's okay. I mean, this time around, I didn't really have much to talk about. Or maybe I will have a lot to talk about. I'm not sure. I'm never really good at deciphering how much time I'm going to need. Anyway, I'm going to talk about how, too much of a good thing is not always that great, or it can lead to some disastrous things. I'm focusing more on the technology aspect in this series. This series is weird in terms of their technology. Like, it's a weird mix of, clearly they are more advanced in a lot of aspects, but it also seems very primitive at the same time.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of weird, but I think when you watch it, you'll kind of understand where I'm coming at.
Honestly, I really feel like it's the best near future prediction that we've seen in recent pop culture references. I don't think that anybody else is going to come as close as Maniac is. Honestly, I see this as where society is going.
Yeah, well, I think part of it, too, is that Maniac portrays the future as, yes, being more technologically advanced, which it's going to be. We just don't know how far, it's going to be technologically. But it's also very dirty and very grimy, which is very much like it really is in real life. Life is very dirty and very grimy. And a lot of other futuristic television shows and movies, the future is clean and it's bright and
shiny.
Yeah, it's shiny, metal plated, there's no dust anywhere. So I think that was a unique aspect to Maniac that a lot of other TV shows kind of fall short
Glossed
a little bit.
Over.
Yeah.
Well, and except for what was that one with Keith Urban and the one guy with the pretty eyes?
You've lost me.
It was a very short show. It was canceled after one season. The cop. It was a buddy cop kind of dramedy thing. It was with the
guy with the robot.
Yeah,
okay.
He was a robot.
The guy with the pretty eyes. Now I know what you're talking about. I can't remember what it's called, but yes, I know. Anyway, not talking about that. And, don't get me wrong. Technology has been great for us as a society. Technology connects the world more than ever before. Even 10, 15 years ago, the music scene was drastically different. Think of like K-pop, for goodness sake. I mean, who would have thought that K-pop would be so popular in the United States, for goodness sake? I mean, music and culture had a really hard time jumping like over vast oceans, and now it's like intense, like in a push of a button. You can see a video that was uploaded by somebody in like Indonesia.
Yeah.
If you wanted to. So, which is amazing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
More likely India, if you
that's true.
Study Netflix, or not Netflix, YouTube.
Yeah. I mean, and some of the quality, like, stuff that they have on there coming out of India is amazing. But anyway, don't get us started. You can find it if you want.
Pat will break that down for you.
If you want to view that. So, and of course, I feel like in the future, it's going to be more so. We're going to be more so connected than we are right now, which feels kind of impossible, really. But I feel like it's going to happen. Especially in the show, you can see that technology, as it's advancing, it's almost like there's like it reached its peak of bringing people together, and now all it's doing is trying to push people away, like making people more like. I don't want to say introverted, because people use introverted a lot as being a negative term, but introverted is not negative. It's just how you are as a person.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more like of like a hermit type of situation, or like
disconnected.
Yeah, disconnected. Especially with Annie's dad. He literally has hidden himself away in a box.
Yeah.
Trying to escape reality. Well, he has escaped reality by using this box.
Well, and I think the difference between introverted and disconnected would be the difference between Annie's dad and Ron Swanson.
Yes. See, Ron doesn't necessarily. Ron says he hates people, but he doesn't hate all people. He loves some people. Do you find yourself hiding, like, from technology, or hiding from other people with technology? Like, do you see yourself doing that sometimes?
Yes. Both.
And yes.
Which is, I think that we do disconnect because we've connected to this more primal aspect of human nature with the internet. In some ways, is that we've become like the chimpanzee. Like, they're much more aggressive. They're much more liable to be set off by any little slight, instead of, our bonobo cousins, where they're going to be more peaceful and more calm.
Well, why they're peaceful and calm. We're not going to mention it on the podcast, but if you want to look them up on the internet and figure out why, I'm sure you can figure it out yourself. Let's just say they're lovers.
Yes. Well, and see, that's the thing, is I think that we've tapped into this kind of primate, idea in our brains that we're competing with one another rather than actually in this race together. That we're all on the same team.
Yes. Gosh, and what's really weird too? Like, what did she call friend proxy? Yeah. Like, buying friends. That. Man, I can see the pluses and negatives to it. Like, do you think it's sad or smart?
When we were trying to write this yesterday, I was thinking about it, and I thought sad right away, but then I realized after a while, I'm like, well, if you paid somebody to be your friend proxy, like, a lot, then maybe that person would actually become your friend in real life, because, they come to like your companionship.
Well, I don't know. That's almost thinking like, there's, because there's certain people who go to the same sex worker over and over again. Is that sex worker going to be your romantic partner now?
I think that's a completely different idea,
but is it, though? I mean, it's the same thing. Like, people go to see sex workers to fill a need in their life that they're not having fulfilled. people see the friend proxy in order to get a need fulfilled that they're not getting fulfilled.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know. I feel like...
I brought up a good point, though, didn't I?
Yes, you did. And I think that Annie's use of the friend proxy was a better use.
To blackmail somebody?
No. Her later use of Owen as a friend proxy. Because she called him friend proxy Owen.
Yes.
And so the guy knew that, oh, yeah, I'm just a stand-in for Owen. But, you know, like, you could tell that he was like, oh, she's kind of cool. Like, you know, I guess I could be friends with her in real life rather than being friend proxy Owen.
Well, I think she was using him more as in the end, it was more of a using him to figure out how she's going to actually deal with real life Owen, which I think is a good thing, because sometimes you got to run through what you're going to say to somebody with somebody else in order to make sure you're saying the right thing.
Yeah, see? So it's a good use of friend proxy.
But that's a good use. I'm saying that you can't replace real life friendship.
Yes.
With a friend proxy.
Which would be the dumb use of friend proxy.
Yes. All right. We figured it out. And in this world, too, that we're in Maniac, the whole work-life balance situation is non-existent. People are literally sleeping at work.
Well, and I think there's so many American companies and corporate cultures that are envious of Japan, which Japan has the only other kind of idealized work environment that because for them it's honor. I mean, it's a completely different cultural idea, but here in America, it's like, how do we do this and still keep our American ideals? Yeah. And I think that's kind of one vision of that in Maniac.
Well, I think that definitely Americans have like a love-hate relationship with working hard and having that work-life balance. I think
working hard or hardly working.
I think. Well, actually, there's been multiple studies out there where men view staying late as working harder, even if they don't necessarily get a lot of stuff done. Now, women, like if they don't feel like they're actually like doing that job, if they have to stay late, they feel guilty about it. Men, on the other hand, don't feel guilty about it, which is a whole other like gender thing. Like women always have to like prove themselves and that kind of stuff. But
and I think that's just an overgeneralization of gender thing, because I'm pretty sure there's men who like feel guilty.
Well, no, this is just like the general population was
population.
Sorry, my cold is coming out. People were surveyed, and then on average, this is what the answers were.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes, there's going to be people who don't agree with that, of course, because it's a survey. But anyway, America, like if you talk to somebody in Europe and compare their work schedule as somebody in America, we are definitely working more hours. We are working harder. We're not as efficient, though, because of that. If we actually sat down and figured a good work-life balance, we would be way more productive. Way more productive. We wouldn't have nearly as many errors as, letting a sentient robot basically control your experiment for you because you're too tired to do it yourself, I guess.
Yep.
But just as a reminder, just in general, maybe we should take this as a focus into your own life. Maybe take a look at your work-life balance and see what you have to do in order to get that done. And sometimes it's just not possible because some people get hardly any sick time, get hardly any vacation time. I mean, you're lucky if you have a job that gives you parental leave. I mean, maternity leave even is like a lucky thing to have. So, I just feel like here in America, like we're constantly pushing ourselves to work harder, but we're not. Get this, I'm gonna use a good like working term. So we got to work smarter instead of working harder.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yes.
Synergy.
Synergy. Anyway, so I kind of did want to talk about the sentient robot thing and how that was like super weird and creepy. And how sentient robots, like this is just another prime example of why they're not that great. Like I get how like it's going to be like a technological marvel and like we finally did it, hooray! And then we can throw the confetti up in the air. But I don't feel like we need to focus on that and make it like a thing that all robots have.
Well, yeah, and I saw a headline today of MIT researchers had created a psychotic robot by feeding it Reddit, like all of Reddit.
Oh my God, that poor thing.
I'm like, yeah, I kind of knew that Skynet would come from Reddit. So. Man,
that's sad. Like that's almost torture to a robot that doesn't actually have a soul.
Well, and so like the internet, I think, taps into our more chimpanzee brain,
for sure.
And like a lot of that electronic is not here. We're gonna be getting the Bible Belt all up in arms in this episode, but is that I don't think that our idea of artificial intelligence is evolved enough. I used the word evolved.
Oh, I was about to say, and that's controversial because
I used the word evolved.
Yeah, my whole point is I'm okay working towards it, but I don't think it should be a main focus that robots all have. Because when you become sentient like the robot did here, it becomes dangerous. Like, it does. It becomes dangerous. But anyway, who are we to know? I mean, we haven't actually gone that far yet in technology, and this could just be a whole thing that doesn't actually happen because we've made some terrible predictions about the future that never actually happened, like flying cars, for example.
Yeah. Or have we? Dun, dun, dun.
Well, I don't know. Well, I know that there's, like, certain, like, cars that, like, use, like, jet propulsion, like, over water. But anyway.
No, I was talking about artificial intelligence.
Oh, and here I am stuck on the flying cars. Anyway, we're running out of time, sir.
Yep.
So, if you want to continue to join this lovely conversation about Maniac, you can follow us on Instagram at Patron Saints of Pulp Culture. You can also follow us at Facebook at Patron Saints of Pulp Culture. And then finally, too, there's Twitter if you want to go there at Real Honest Faith. And last but not least, we also have our website at thehonestfaith.com.
With all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.